folks, welcome back to Threes in Bubble here. Now this is going to be fun. Well, I can't say I enjoyed T-37's tweets. I struggled through it. I did okay. The majority of my grades were goods with a couple fairs and one stinking unsat. But for the most part, I was just the average slug going through the program. But when I got to 38s, man, I just caught fire. And I loved it. God, I loved it. I even wear the t-shirt. Anyway, as I mentioned earlier, we finished tweets on the 9th of October, 1970. And according to the grade sheet I kept, it has my name at the top of it, we rolled into T-38s on the 15th of October. So there were 6 days in between while everybody in the class got caught up. Now, before I go any further with the T-38 side, I want to take a moment here and go through my yearbook here, 7107 Randolph Air Force Base, and acknowledge the instructor pilots in G-Flight. Without those guys, none of us, I doubt, would have our wings. And I appreciate them more and more every day. I always have appreciated them. But I just want to take a moment here and run around the room, if you will, and acknowledge them. Starting at Flight Commander, Captain Ford H. Barrett. Now, I really like Captain Barrett. He later made colonel and was in maintenance, but I just enjoyed him. He was a down-to-earth flight commander. Every now and then you'd see him smile, but by and large, mostly business. He was fair. And I did enjoy flying with him. I flew a couple sorties with him. Starting at the assistant flight commander when we entered G-Flight was Captain William Seckerly. Now, Bill Seckerly was a good guy. He was a former RF-4 guy. I don't know what Ford Barrett flew before, but Bill was a former RF-4 guy. And he was a good guy. I think I might have flown with him once or twice. I'll have to check the grade sheets as we go along. Now, in the corner of the flight room, just diagonally from where I sat, was Marshall Tilley, Captain Marshall Tilley. And I thought he was a great guy, but he was a guy I stayed away from. He was a guy that scared the living crap out of me just by his demeanor. And I wish I could tell you I had a chance to fly with him. But I didn't. I would have liked to now in retrospect. But in those days, he had a look about him that said, I'm not going to put up with nonsense from anybody. He never came out and said it, but he just carried that demeanor. At least that's the way I interpreted it. And I wanted to get out of that flight room with somebody saying, how'd Bob Holliker do? And he'd say, Bob who? That was my objective. Now, Captain Tilley flew thuds in Vietnam, and I just held a great deal of respect for the man. Matter of fact, if you peruse my site here, I think the title of the video I did is A New Marshal in Town. I'll look for it and put it in the description here if I think about it. That reminds me, I got to go take my Prevision after this video. Dang it. Then we have Roger Gossick. Now, I liked Roger. Dang, I liked him. He was, again, an RF-4 guy. And he was our stand eval guy. He would stand up and give emergency procedures. And, again, very fair, really a great guy. He had a great sense of humor. He once told us during basic EP training, emergency procedures training, he enlightened us that busy hands are happy hands. And I never forgot that when he was talking about how to conduct yourselves during an emergency procedure. Then we had Dan Bowes. Now, I don't know a lot about Dan. He sat at the table next to me, but I don't know a lot about him. Probably sad to say. My instructor pilot was Captain Rick Vale, and I think he was a FAPE, or plowback in those days, and he was a great guy. I just loved flying with Rick. Then we had Roger Spencer. Now, Roger was finding his way. He was a first lieutenant, plowback, FAPE, And he was just finding his way, bless his soul. He was taking a course in psychology, and I soon picked up on the fact I could tell where he was in the book by what kind of technique he was using to train any particular day during a briefing or whatever. And it was kind of amusing to me. And I'll tell you a little bit more. I did fly a ride with Roger. And it was kind of memorable, and I'll share that with you as we go along. And then last in the flight was Lieutenant Glenn Vincent. He was the youngest guy in the flight. He's just kind of quiet man. I flew my last flight in the pilot training program with him. And again, I'll share my experience with that. But that kind of sets the stage here going into T-38s in October 1970. Now, the first event that I had was a briefing by Roger, kind of a welcome to G-flight briefing, I suppose. And it was rather nondescript, which reminds me, do you know the difference between pilots and apes? Well, if you've been to the zoo, have you ever seen two apes sitting around briefing each other? I doubt it. At any rate, we got our welcome briefing and then picked up with basic link trainers. My first two trainers began on the 20th of October, and they were both goods. Then my next two trainers, link trainers, a couple days later, and the reason I don't tell you about it is because I dropped the damn grade sheet, and I'm not going to bend over and pick it up. But a couple days later was by another instructor named Dean, and I got a pair of excellence on those two rides. It's obvious to me that Dean was a better instructor than the other guy. At any rate, we were in those link trainers. They were, compared to today, they were primitive, but they did the job. And, I didn't mind them at all. I was learning and I was having a ball. Now, at some point during these early days, we were given our G suits. That was the coming of age for us. I mean, none of us were scheduled to fly for a week or two, or a week or so, but we're all walking around with our G suits on. Holy crap! And I even heard reports of guys wearing their G suits around their apartments. Give me a break. But anyway, if you've ever put one on, you'll know the feeling. It was cool. And when you put on a G suit when you're in pilot training, you become somebody. So that was kind of the way we went into T-38s. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention afterburner climbs. Now, I have stated before that when we entered training under a umbrella of esprit de corps. God, we were a bunch of fired up kids. I mean to tell you, we didn't have none of this stinking professionalism or any of this other crap that we're seeing today. We were just fired up, and we had briefings on our heritage and things like that, and we also had a dollar ride that incorporated an afterburner climb, and damn, those were fun. I remember just walking out in the early morning, and they had a slab of concrete sitting just outside of Hangar 12 on the south end of the hangar. And there'd be a bunch of us congregating around there, just waiting for the class as they began rolling down the runway on their dollar rides. And we'd watch our IPs get airborne, suck the gear, leave the thing on the deck, come smoking down the runway. When they got a little bit past us and down toward the end of the runway, you just see them. It looked like they were standing the jet on its tail, when in reality, they're probably doing a 45, 50-degree climb. But it looks so cool to see that. And I'll tell you about my dollar ride here in the next couple of days. But suffice to say, we're sitting out there just watching one after another, and it was a blast. God, I'll tell you what, it was a lot of fun. Should have been there. At any rate, this is Bobo getting caught up. Base gear. Stop. Good to see everybody.